Welcome, brethren, to part two of our series on the Davidian Seventh-day Adventist history in regards to our Grace Limbo periods. Um, as you see the picture here, that's the uh, helicopter or plane view of the grounds of Mountaindale. And this is, I believe it's pretty current. I don't know the year it was taken, but this is a nice property. The brethren have quite a big spread here in the rural area of New York, away from the city, which is good. And so we're going to get into part two. We've prayed. We ask that you do the same, claim the promise of John 16:13, and he will guide us into all truth. Let us begin. All right, a prayer thought. In reviewing our past history, having traveled over every step of our advance to our present standing, I can say, praise God, as I can see what God has wrought. I am filled with astonishment with Christ as our leader. We have nothing to fear except as we shall forget the way the Lord has led us. Testimonies to Ministers, page 31. So again, we highlight this very important counsel that if you don't know the history of the Lord's leading, well, you're going to be stuck. You're not going to understand the different things that come along as the Lord moves his message and his people to the kingdom. In other words, there's a process, and we have to understand that he's in charge right now. Anybody that comes along and says, well, the video is all messed up and there's nobody really in charge. You got to do your own thing from your home and gather some groups together and, proceed the best you can. That's foolishness, brethren. And we want to show in this study, part two, how the Lord has led us, and specifically through these grace limbo periods. Is very important to know that. And so we hope you'll be blessed, and let us continue. All right, so let's review the last report. First, our first Christian storehouse headquarters began after a grace limbo period was granted the Jewish church to come in line with the truth. They did not, and it was transferred to the apostolic group bearing the truth. Second grace limbo period, many centuries later, the SDA church was divinely authorized to be the storehouse headquarters through the prophetess Ellen White. They continued for decades until the Lord's Elijah message appeared, and during the first few years of it, the SDA church was given a grace limbo period to come into line with the truth. They did not. The storehouse headquarters was then transferred to the Davidian Seventh-day Adventist. Third, the Mount Carmel Davidian Seventh-day Adventist movement continued with the truth, and upon the death of the prophet, the leadership went to Florence Houteff. She and her council took command and soon built prophetic ideas into the message. They fail, and a grace limbo period is granted to come back into the line with truth. They did not. The transfer goes to the California Brethren, known as the 100% rod only group. So here we see that in our last report, we reviewed all these opportunities for God's people to come in line, and they did not. And so there was a grace limbo period given once they had the truth in front of them to come in line with it. And unfortunately, brethren, as we see these examples, everyone failed. And so this is not a good part of our history that we should be proud of. All right, so the headquarters and storehouse is to head east. In 1969, the 100% rod-only Riverside California group restudies the prophecies of Ezekiel 47 and what the rod says, and decide to head eastward. It has been evident for some time that it would be necessary to seek a more central location for the office in order to serve the whole field efficiently. So those at the headquarters have been praying very earnestly over this matter for many months. And as they kept on praying for light, the Lord finally indicated definitely that the beautiful Southern California was no longer to remain the center of his work for the lost sheep of the house of Israel, but an eastward course was to be seen in the stream from that fountain which is to swell into the great river of Ezekiel's prophecy. And plans were soon formulated whereby a thorough search could be made in the territory indicated by the Lord where the future headquarters were to be found. One symbolic code number 10, page 3. This is, of course, the message from the prophet saying that the Eastward Course was the course and that we needed to follow it. All right, the movement moves to Salem, South Carolina. We are happy to announce that on September 4, 1971, we received the charter from the state of South Carolina. This is a culmination of about 14 months' work of both South Carolina and California legal authorities in obtaining the necessary legal procedure for the clear title to a charter. We, the council, believe the Lord has led and the ways open to republish religious literature. Our chief aim is to print the Shepherd's Rod message as given by Brother V.T. Hodoff. Publishing is to be done under the above name, the General Association of Davidian Seventh-day Adventist. And this was their code, 10 symbolic code number 2, July, September 1971, on page 9. All right, so let's now look at this fourth GraceLimbo period, and this is a transfer from the Salem organization. You can see Don Adair with Sister Bonnie Smith. Bonnie is today 92, I believe, or maybe even 93. And she's been put in a rest home. She's in a nursing home, and she's well taken care of. She's still, doing fairly well during her older age, and she has family members looking out for her. She's not a part of Salem, but this was a picture where the two were gathered together, and they took a picture of the two pioneers. On the right side is again that picture of Mountaindale's association headquarters. So this fourth Grace period goes from Salem to Mountaindale. All right, Don Adair proclaims false doctrine. Salem publishes and produces the Rod literature, but begins to add false doctrine to the brethren, specifically those with Assyrian Confederacy, Jacob's time of trouble before Ezekiel 9, intervening time, etc. Soon, brethren like Bro, Hebert, Archer, and others rise up against Adair to protest his teachings, specifically those with teachings. They concluded it was not truth and in accordance with the message. So Don Adair held the mantle for a while, and then unfortunately he injected his own pipe into the golden bowl and produced these doctrines. And it's unfortunately, brethren, as many know, except with the exception of those with, these other false doctrines have been handed down to Davidians ever since that time. And today we're still dealing with that, as most Davidians still are proclaiming these Salem doctrines. And this is something we have to unlearn. The Spare Prophecy says many lessons to learn and many, many to unlearn. Remember now, that applies to Davidian Seventh-day Adventists as well. All right, Don Adair announces the disbelieving brethren as rebels. They are disfellowshipped. Anthony Hebert and his New York group responds, Dear brethren and present truth believers, after a close and thorough investigation with much fasting and prayer, we as concerned brethren in New York thought it critically necessary to address a most sensitive and delicate issue that has arisen subsequent to the article published under the caption 144,000 and those with them. We hope this letter will be a blessing to you as it has been to us with the help of God's Spirit in truth to see the working of Satan in this critical hour. We may be called rebels in New York, but if we have to be called rebels for the truth and righteousness, then so be it, until the righteous judge severs the goats from the sheep. A Davidian History, page 299. So this is the letter that Salem received, and also the brethren out there in the field received as well, saying that the New York brethren could not go along any further with Adair's false teachings, particularly the 144,000 and those with. All right. So after the Grace Limbo time of the rejection and the subsequent Salem refusal to come in line with the truth, the transfer from Salem to Mountaindale is announced. On May 23, 1983, the New York Brethren held their first session and made the following announcement. The long-awaited meeting of the World Field of Davidia met its fulfillment when most of the delegates and the brethren from different branches convened in Brooklyn, New York, to commence what was to be a historic occasion. A motion was made, thoroughly discussed, and unanimously passed to sever ties from the General Association of Davidian Seventh-day Adventists, Salem, South Carolina. As a consequence, another motion was made to reestablish God's headquarters as it was in the beginning after the order of Mount Carmel Training Center, Waco, Texas. At this juncture, it was evident to all that God was leading and that his spirit enveloped the place. So Mountaindale began the announcement and said that we are now going to officially be, upon the leading of the Lord, the storehouse headquarters. And that was May 23, 1983. All right, so let's take a look again at the Eastward Course. It's very important to remember this, brethren, as this is something the Lord has delegated for our headquarters storehouse location. We know, again, to briefly recap, that this was the California, Los Angeles area where Brother Hotter started the message, and it continued soon to be transferred over to Waco, Texas, and it was there for a couple decades or so. And then, of course, we had the minor problem. I say minor because the devil tried his best to knock out this message, but it did not succeed. Regrouped back here, and then eventually, after study in 1969 and several years of being in California, the message proceeded straight out to Salem. Okay, so they knew that the Eastward Course was the right way, so they couldn't stay there. So they went straight back here into Salem. Now, they stayed in Salem for several years, and it's important to remember that not all these brethren right here in 1969 agreed that Salem was the place. However, a fair good amount of them did. And of course, those that did were in agreement with the Lord in the Eastward Course. There were some that just couldn't go with the Eastward Course, and they stayed in Yucaipa and around here, just doing their own private ideas, I guess. And so the brethren that knew the prophecies went here to Salem. And then, of course, Salem later had, as we reviewed in this report, their problem with Adair's teaching. And from there, the breakoff occurred and went up to Mountaindale, New York. So we see a beautiful Eastward Course that the Lord had proclaimed in the prophecy, and it's been kept by the Davidian Seventh-day Adventist associations. Now, the understanding now that we have is that this is still, despite the false doctrine, considered with the Lord as the headquarters. Now, I know that's is something that is going to take some time to understand, but apparently because of the grace limbo periods given, we cannot cross out Mountaindale right now, because this would be against what the Lord has done in the past. Remember, now, if we forget the history of how the Lord has led us, we won't understand. But we now know the history, so we cannot cross out this Mountaindale association. Rather, we are pleading with them in different ways to come into line with the truth, just as all the other pleadings happened. This is the current circumstance. All right, Mountaindale continues as headquarters storehouse. During this period, some break away from Mountaindale to begin anew with another Waco association. Both continue with the message. However, brethren soon question the Florence Hotta published new codes. This leads to many studies and the issue coming into the public Davidian square. The leaders of both associations steadfastly reject the idea that the new codes are not inspired. This debate continues for several years until it reaches a turning point at the Mountaindale session of July-August session of 2022. During the session, the subject of the following doctrines, among others, were discussed and voted upon. Are the new codes inspired and part of the Golden Bowl? Is Jacob's time of trouble before or after Ezekiel 9? Are the fundamental beliefs in sequential order? Is the Assyrian Confederacy teaching a true teaching as commonly taught today? These are some of the doctrines that were brought to a forefront and studied in that July-August session of 2022. But let's backtrack a little bit here and say that Waco broke away from Mountaindale. And as such, remember now, the leaders of Waco, and I'm talking specifically of the head leaders, Brother Archer and Brother Decarius, McCollum, all those were either taught by Hebert or were taught by Don Adair. So we got to remember that these people had these teachings from way back, and it started from Salem. It started from Salem that they have these teachings that they won't give up. And unfortunately, that's the situation we have today. All right, so the ultimatum was made in session. Mountaindale votes and rules. The following is what they will believe and teach. Number one, the General Association of Mount Carmel, New York, confirms and maintains the validity of the Old and Sermon codes as authentic writings of V.T. Houghton. Number two, GADSDA, Mountaindale, understand that the fundamental beliefs are for the most part sequential. However, evidently, points 5 and 7 do not follow in order. Jacob's time of trouble is actually before Ezekiel 9. Number 3, the GADSDA, Mount Carmel, Mountaindale, believes that Jacob's time of trouble will begin before Ezekiel 9. Number 4, that Mountaindale confirms that the latter-day Assyrian Confederacy commences before the loud cry and before the slaughter of Ezekiel 9. It is not the image of the beast or the Amsterdam Confederacy. This is according to 13 Symbolic Code number 34, Track 14, 2GG 41, and other inspired references. Note, they rule that you will be fired as a paid Bible worker if you do not teach the above. So here's what they confirmed in the session. And obviously, this was going against the conscience of several of the Mountaindale leaders, their teachers, and they couldn't agree with it. It was very, very serious, brethren. And obviously, they had no income, and something was about to change. The fired workers and others regroup and form a ministry. And here's the picture of the logo for the ministry, pre-11th hour ministry, with a Bible and the clock right before the 11th hour. We tried to make it clearer, brethren, but unfortunately the image we had is not so clear, but this is just the general concept of the image. And so the fired workers and others, including yourself, myself, were in a rock and a hard spot. What could we do? There was nothing that we could do at this point. We could not bear with Mountaindale due to the ultimatum, and we were forced to form the ministry. And remember now, in the prior GraceLimbo history, we know that each of those groups and movements that formed out of the prior didn't have any plans to do that. They were forced because the truth was on the table, and the prior church groups or whatever rejected it while it was on the table. They could not accept it. And even though there was a pleading, even though there was truth put before them, the rejection was still steadfast. And so out of necessity, these new movements came. So that's the same situation with pre-11th hour ministry. All right, so the current GraceLimbo period, just as the 4 GraceLimbo periods before, the pre-11th hour ministry is endeavoring to stand up for the truth during this time. Specifically, 1, the new codes are not inspired and riddled with errors and compromise. They are not to be part of the Golden Bowl. Number 2, the fundamental beliefs are in sequential order. Number 3, Jacob's time of trouble comes after Ezekiel 9. 4, The doctrines such as Syrian Confederacy, intervening time, pre-Ezekiel 9, persecution from government authorities, etc., have their basis from the new codes and should be rejected. So we at Pre-11th Hour Ministry stand firmly behind these truths, and they are on the table right now with Mountaindale. Will Mountaindale accept them, come back in line with the truth, or, as history shows, will they continue to be rejectors? This is what we're waiting for, brethren. This is what it all comes down to. So we're praying and pleading with the brethren to pray for the brethren at Mountaindale that they do not repeat the historical precedent. All right, why must these candlestick transfers occur? No one is lost for believing a false interpretation of a prophecy before the truth of it is revealed, providing the false interpretation does not draw him away from some other truth. Such individuals, however, are in great danger because, as history reveals, very few who become thus involved in error are willing to humble themselves by renouncing their errors and accepting the truth when it is made known. They are consequently in constant peril of sinning against the Holy Ghost. And being acutely aware of this, Satan misinterprets the prophecies before they are divinely revealed. He realizes full well that many, unwilling to be corrected and to exchange their errors for revealed truth, will thereby be led to eternal ruin. All important, therefore, is the need that the student of truth fortify himself with all honesty and humility as the light of truth is now turned searchingly on popular theories. Track 5, page 7. So we see here that, unfortunately, there is few that are willing to be corrected and exchange their false ideas for the truth. And this is why these transfers occur. The Lord does not bear forever. It cannot bear forever. Why? Because he sees that the false church or movements are leading to eternal ruin. And he cannot take this. He must rise up a group to lead the way. And so the transfer has to be made. All right, so let's look at our summary and review. Christ our King bore patiently with the Jewish church, yet they failed to come into line with the truth, and the storehouse headquarters was transferred to the apostolic movement. The SDA church was presented the Lord's Elijah message, and it too rejected the truth. Mount Carmel, Waco, Davidian Seventh-day Adventist movement under Florence Houghton also rejected the GraceLimbo Period and did not come into line with the truth. The Salem Davidian Seventh-day Adventist movement later rejected the truth and remained steadfast in error to those with false doctrine, and the headquarters storehouse was transferred once more to Mountaindale Group. Now Mountaindale is under the same historic GraceLimbo Period to come in line with the truth. Time will tell, but it will take a miracle based on our history prior movements. Prayer is needed. So, brother, in summary and closing, we would like to hear from you. If you can, let us know your interest in this message, and we'll be glad to send out private studies, or you can join us every Sabbath. We have online studies through freeconferencecall.com. And of course, this is our information that we can be reached at. We do have a website up and running. We have the literature coming along really good. We've got the charts. We've got pictures of Brother Hotov's time at the camp coming on, and so a lot of good things that are happening with Pre-11th Hour Ministry during this GraceLimbo period. And we pray that the Lord will waken our brethren at Mountaindale, that they may see the truth and come in line. You know, that's all we can do is plead, as the prior groups did before us, to come in line with the truth. And we have it on the table. It's up for them to accept or reject. So this concludes our series on the history of our GraceLimbo periods. We hope you've been blessed. Until next time, may the Lord continue to guide you into all truth.